Once upon a time, there was a king who thought that he had everything. He thought he was prepared for the throne. He thought that he had all of the education that he needed in order to lead his people. But things weren't going they weren't going brilliantly for him, let's be honest. And it turns out that he was missing three things, only he didn't know it. So he was on his throne over 1,000 years ago now. It was the time when in Northern Europe, the Germanic peoples, the Anglo-Saxons, the Vikings, they were all active, and Christianity was certainly starting to penetrate Northern Europe at this time. And this particular king, his name had been passed on to a Christian missionary as someone who was maybe struggling a little bit and might be open to the Christian message and to converting his people. And so this Christian missionary traveled across the lands through some places that were friendly, some that were hostile, to go and visit this king. And when he arrived, he saw immediately why it was that he had been recommended to go and speak to this particular sovereign. So his realm, his lands were relatively large. There were many people living upon them. There was a relatively high level of poverty there. Certainly, it was still working to it, but it was past its heyday, let's say. And when he went into the great throne room of the king, which was bedecked in shields, and he was offered mead and all of the foods that might be there, but they could see just like little worried looks. He noticed these little worried looks as he was being passed the food. How much is he going to eat? Those sorts of things. So like the wrappings of success were all around him, and yet he could feel underneath that things weren't quite going according to plan. And the king was seated on his throne, and he had what looked like the weight of the world on his shoulders. He looked stooped somehow, aged before his time. His beard was graying, and his muscles weren't as strong as they maybe could have been. And his brow was furrowed. He had a crown upon his head, a very heavy crown, which again looked amazing and looked like power. And yet this man didn't seem truly powerful. So over the days and weeks that followed, the Christian missionary got to know this king. And one day they sat down together. They had developed a relationship that felt like a relationship of trust. There was almost an intimacy between them. The king had enjoyed the stories that the Christian missionary had brought, and the simplicity and the hope of his message in many ways. And in return, the Christian missionary had been very impressed by the learning and the knowledge of the king, of his understanding of the traditions of his peoples. And certainly the Christian missionary was writing some of these down and planning to bring them back so that they had a record of the way in which the peoples of the Germanic tribes had lived. So very knowledgeable, took his job incredibly seriously, and yet was struggling. And the Christian missionary said to the king, he said, tell me what it is that guides you. What is it that guides you with your ways and with your people? And the king said, oh, well, now that is something that I do have, a learning that has been passed down to me through my fathers and my mothers before me, down through the generations. And they gave me three gifts that I have used to help to guide me throughout my life. And the first, he said, is the Ingus rune. You see our Ingus rune here. And he said, this is the power of consumption. This is the importance that must be placed on there being grain stores available for my people, and so that I can live the rules of hospitality, offer food to you. And that is a guiding principle for me, that the seeds must be there, and that it's my job to tend to that and to make sure that there is enough available for my people to consume. The second, he said, is the power of sovereignty. It's the power of leadership, that my people must trust me. They must know that I am the leader. I keep my hall looking resplendent for them, so that they know where they need to come for that leadership, for that direction. My presence, my ability to make them feel like I am strong and powerful is so important for them. And the third is the Tewaz rune, and this is the power of victory. This is that we must know when it is that we are successful, that my people can see the success all around us all of the time, that they have the knowledge that our people are strong and powerful, and it's not just me, that I am able to lead them to victory, and that I contain within me the truth and the vision to guide us towards those victories at all times. The Christian missionary said, "Oh, you know, interesting. That must feel like a lot of pressure," he said. And the king said, and he sort of looked around just to make sure that no one was looking. "Yes," he said, "but it is the burden that I must carry for my people, for us to move forward." And the Christian missionary said to him, "What if there was another way? What if there were teachings that were placed less of a burden on you, that meant that you could rely on something else, something more than you?" And the king said, "Oh, well, I thought that I had that." And the Christian missionary said, "Well, that doesn't seem to be working very well for you." And it was relatively straightforward for that missionary to persuade the king that there were other ways that would still allow him to look after his people, to make sure that they were fed and cared for, but that would open up new trade routes for him, for example, so he could fulfill that mission of the Ingu seed, and that would mean that he had a vaster empire to rely on, that he could bring in the power of the church in particular, that would be there and would bless him and would promise him that he could have his place, and that his rule would be passed on from father to son. In this instance, we forgot a little bit about the daughters there, but that the church would support him in that, and that he would be able to fulfill that sovereignty, that requirement of sovereignty, with the support of the church, and that because he would be now within that one true faith, victory was guaranteed. And it wasn't that difficult to persuade him of that. When we start out with the runes, we can start by looking at that and saying, okay, so this is the Ingu's seed, and this is Manas, the rune of the sovereign, and this is Tewaz, the rune of victory. And what we're looking at in this session is story bones and spirit questing. And the story, which isn't quite finished yet, don't worry, is a story bone story. It is it's based on sort of a projection, let's say, of what we think may have happened through history. It's not based in history. The king has no name. The runes, these three runes, offered this story to me. So it's a story bone story from which we can draw meaning and create truth. And you can see this with the king. He found his meaning and he created his truth from these three runes, but he held within him so much weight, from what he had been told, who he was told he needed to be, what he needed to stand for, all of those things. And he'd come to the point where he was stuck in himself. He wasn't drawing on other advisors. The relief that he got when the Christian missionary came and said, there's another way, was tangible to me when I went to see this story. And when I went into the hall of the king and received this story, what I noticed was an absence of collaboration, an absence of others who might take some of the weight from the king. There was no ecosystem, let's say, of leadership in that sense. The weight was held by him. Now, we might look at that and we might say, okay, so 1,000 years on, we've the way in which we work in, certainly in this country, our leadership is distributed. We don't have a single sovereign. We don't have power placed in one individual person. What I'm talking about here is about spirit questing. It's about our own notions of sovereignty and our own notions of power, how this works. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking a little bit at the soul. We're looking at two sets of story bones today. So we've got the story bones of the runes that we're going to be looking at and seeing, well, what happens when we go beyond those written simple meanings of the runes into their spiritual realms. And then we're going to be looking at the soul, at the three parts that when the king came to me, because this was his story that he shared after his death, he said to me, I was taught so much, I was told so much. And when I died, I entered the spirit of my ancestors. I entered their circle, say. And they embraced me and they said, well done, you have done your best. But we realized that we failed you because we sought to educate you, the path of the sovereign, to educate you, to prepare you by telling you everything that we knew and telling you everything about what you should be. What we didn't do is offer you space for initiation, space for spirit questing, where you could find those deep truths for yourself that would allow you to walk with a different weight. They said the weight of education is far heavier than the weight of initiation. Now, when I heard these words, I thought these sound true to me. I remember going to university and the exams that I needed to do and the cramming that I needed to do for those exams, and the fear that came up inside me that I was going to miss an answer, get it wrong. It was all about what was held inside my head. Everything was about what was held inside my head. And then I went on to learn Reiki and to become a Wiccan initiate. Most recently, like literally this morning, preparing to do the first parts of an exam that I'm doing as an embodiment facilitator, and realizing that let's say the learnings, or rather the transformational journeys that I've been on, that has not felt heavy. Starting off on the exam, I was writing it through and going, wow, this is already inside me. I know this already. And I know that my answers are going to be deeply personal to me. They are not going to be the same as everybody else's answers, because the idea isn't to show that I have internalized all the knowledge that I have been given and I can parrot fashion it back. It's to show that I know how to apply it to my specific context and in my specific role in the world, understanding what my destiny is and understanding how I can, how the relationships that I have with other people, how that's going to affect the way in which I teach and share and train and all of those things. I've made it mine. And this is what the king didn't have. He didn't have the ability to make it his. He wasn't shown that. He was given something that was everybody else's, the weight of all of his ancestors. This is ours. You will now carry it. Rather than, this is what we became. This is what we learned. And through sharing this, we are seeking to help you to discover your role, your destiny, your way forward in the world. So it's a very, very different approach to initiation than there is to education. And I realized as this story was shared that the king was offering a sense of why it is that we have lost so much of the northern tradition, so that now we only have the story bones, because he was saying we'd forgotten how to work with the bones, and we'd forgotten how to move through them and to undertake initiatory journeys that mean that we then become the flesh upon those bones. So I've forgotten how to do this. We've become a process-driven society that says we educate, and we educate in order for people to become producers, producers of knowledge, producers of the seed, of the grain, of those things, and then they get to win. We produce, we consume, we win. Is what we've been told, and that pattern is the one that we're battling with at the moment. And so this is why going back into the story bones is important. So what he said to me when I sort of did my quest with this king, and he'd gone to the circle of ancestors, was that he had learned, not in his human lifetime, but at a later point, he said, what I had forgotten, or rather what I was never given the opportunity to discover because I didn't go on my spirit quest, was that the Ingus, it's not about the seed, or it wasn't for me about the seed. It was about the cycle. It was about the cycle of planting, of gestation, of reaping, of offering back to the land, and of empowering my people to do that. It wasn't about me being able to count every single seed and put some into my storehouse to prove how important I was. It was about making sure that my people were empowered to create a sustainable cycle of life for themselves and then for me as well. Cycle of life. It was what I needed to learn, and I didn't take that from it. I took the seed because that's what it said on the tin. I didn't have the opportunity to open the tin and actually taste the rune and receive my initiation from it, which is what I needed in order to become the leader, the king that I wish I could have been, you know, and that maybe I will be in the future. So I like to think that he said that too. The Manaz rune. So, I saw this and I saw sovereign, I saw leader, I saw power, I saw I needed to have all of the trappings of leadership and power so that people think that I am powerful. What I didn't see in the Manaz rune was the ravens, Hugin and Munin, flying down, just like Odin when he sits upon his throne. The ravens come down and they bring the knowledge from all of the worlds, the thoughts, the memories, and then he integrates that in himself. But Odin literally goes on retreat. He does not sit on the throne all of the time because he needs to go on his own spirit quests in order to integrate that knowledge and that understanding. He has advisors, Saga, Mimir, the Nornir, who are part of his web of leadership. I saw a throne. I didn't see a dialogue. I didn't see the sovereign in the center here receiving and then choosing. I didn't see the quest to be of service, the quest for sovereignty. I saw I need to sit on the throne and look like a king. And then he brought them the Tewaz rune. And he said, I saw victory. What I didn't see was the quest for truth, for an understanding of what victory was going to mean for me. That I didn't need to look like somebody who was victorious. I didn't need to win all of the things that everybody told me I needed to do. I didn't need to have the fancy car or the big house or the best next version of whatever phone it is that I needed. I didn't need those things. I needed to go on my own quest for truth. Tewaz is the rune of the guiding star, our truth. But I never had the chance. I didn't have the time. I wasn't given the tools to go on that quest, to find my spiritual truth that would then allow me to say, in this moment, what does it mean for me to win on my own terms? Think about Tyr, the god who is the patron of this rune, and the way in which he changes, he shapes and shifts his own identity in order to meet his truth in that moment. Now, he was a warrior, but he sacrifices his sword arm because his truth in that moment is to offer that sacrifice and then to become something else. These are the things that the king shared with me, as he shared with me that process of initiation that we need to go through to work with whatever story bones we choose. In this case, for me, obviously the story bones of the runes have spoken to me for years, for decades now. Are they speaking to you? And if so, what are you doing to make sure that you are not receiving an education about the runes? You are receiving an initiation about the runes. So I said to you that what actually was happening when the king was there, burdened by this weight of the sort of education that he had received about what it meant to be the king. And he had the bones of the runes in his hands, but no ability to go and actually receive the initiation from him. I think that what he was missing was the ability to work with three aspects of what I think of as being the soul complex that the northern peoples explored. So I brought in the runes for you to start with because the runes are a relatively complete system, and we know a lot about each of them. We can go and we can research their stories, and there is a way to quest with them. When I started working with Northern Tradition soul lore, I discovered that is even more sparse than the runes, and that parts of Northern Tradition soul lore are actually very modern. And some we might not even consider to be part of soul lore at all. And so I had to go on a much longer, more self-guided, let's say, quest with the with the soul complex of the Northern Soul. And I teach on Awaken, and we go deeper into it with Idrazil's Path, the different parts of the soul complex. What I love about the Northern European soul complex is that it's not like, here is my soul, pops in to the world, and then it in a body, it bobs along. It does good things, it does bad things, and it sort of somehow, then there's a counter inside it that says you are now a good soul or you're a bad soul, and then you get to the end and someone looks at you and peers down at you and goes, yes, you can pass through this way and you will go through that. Thank you very much. No, Northern tradition soul law doesn't do that. It works on the basis of what I think of about as a sort of an ecosystem of the soul, some parts of which are quite central, a sort of inside, a sort of internal core that changes relatively slowly, unless we have, sort of spiritual interventions. We have deep transformational experiences that can impact on that part of us. And then we have parts of us that are woven in and that are shared with the physical world around us, with the people around us, with the energies that are playing around us, that are part of the ancestors, so that we are part of the tapestry of being. We are not separate individuals having experience like riding in a body. The body is part of the soul, a part that has been traveling through the genetic coding of all of your ancestors until it comes and weaves in, and so all of these different parts weave in. It's not it was born, then it dies. It has had its own journey. Even beyond death, the body will continue to have a journey, and it will be imbued with other parts of your soul essence because of that. Now, as it comes on to become those trees, land, oceans, all of those things will carry part of the other parts of your essence with you. So I wanted to explore with you 3 aspects of Northern European soul law, just sort of introduce them to you and talk about how we can start to work with them and spirit quest with them, so that we aren't missing those fundamental pieces that I believe our king was missing, like partially because he was burdened by so much sort of education, let's say, and he hadn't had that chance for an initiation. So the first I wanted to share with you is called the Ond, sort of O-N-D, umlaut over the top of the O. And this is often seen as being in conjunction with weird. So we have the flow of weird, of fate, and then we have Ond, which is considered to be, the word means law, and that which is written. You can think about the Nornir carving that into the world tree. And when we think about Ond as being something that's not separate to, it's not like, here's your destiny, as you enter the gates, you go through, and then there's going to be some like destinations on the route that you need to pass, and then you'll get to the end. It's not like a board game type of thing. But what it is you might think about it as being soul contracts that have been created. You might think about it as being, if you are to undertake a journey of healing, a journey of finding wisdom, a journey of stepping into powerful leadership, a journey of fulfilling what the Nornir, the fates, are seeing and contributing to an overall picture where, we soar and are fabulous, and who knows, one day reach the stars and do all sorts of things, or one where we dissipate and fizzle out and are burdened by the weight of everything that comes before us. Then we want to pursue our Ond. It is something that we want to quest for. And some of those times, sometimes we're going to get things that we go, really, is that part of the quest? Honestly, I'm not saying that questing is always easy. We know that from all of the myths and legends, don't we? That questing is not always easy, but it is essential for the evolution of the soul. And so we can start to work with our Ond through readings, through developing our relationships with our runes, through looking at, okay, so if I get the Ingu's rune, I can think to myself, is it my job to, to be part of the cycle of consumption? To be the receiving of the seed all of the time and the planting, or is it that I'm part of the cycle of creation, that I am birthing something inside me powerful and potent that will come forth and blossom in future generations to come, and that I need to receive nourishment in order to do that? But I can also be part of the cycle, making sure that other people who also have that seed of the possibilities of the future resting inside them, that they get to do that as well, that it becomes part of a cycle of sustainability. What is the meaning that we take from readings that we do where we say, what does my Aunt have in store for me in the future? We can do those as year ahead readings, for example. Can be really nice ways of working with our Aunt. So you might think, what is the destiny that I have been trained for, educated into, that my like social position, my amount of privilege allows me or doesn't allow me, constrains me by, gives me freedom to, all of those things, as well as what I've been told a good person is or a bad person is, or things like that. I'm to work actively with that. And then to say, okay, through my readings, what do I think that the universe, the consciousness of the universe sees as my destiny? And also, what do I desire in my depths? And this brings me on to the second part of the soul that I think is really powerful for us to work with if we're thinking about that I'm not standing in my true sovereignty at this point. The weight feels very heavy. Then we can work with the Valkyria. Now, the Valkyria is I say relatively, it's a very modern term. It doesn't connect with the Valkyrie. There, you could argue that they are maybe, we can look at them and we can say, okay, the Valkyrie are there and they support us in pursuing our chosen destiny, and they can see inside our hearts and they know who we are and they encourage us into that to be our best selves. That might be the best way I can describe how they would connect in with the Valkyria. But the Valkyria is deemed to be the soul essence. I spent a long time working on this because I was suspicious of this part of the soul because of the fact that you can't find it in the ancient texts. It's a modern term. But I have actually found it to be incredibly powerful. And perhaps if you think about the seed, and I want to talk about the seed, what rests in my heart, perhaps it's just a part that has got lost from the knowledge of the ancestors, or perhaps it's a part that is just incredibly relevant to us today in a way that our ancestors, when they were on their soul journey and they were being called to fulfill their destinies, they didn't need to have that concept of the Valkyria in order to work with it actively. Perhaps it was just simply there and relevant and imminent for them. What you need to bear in mind with, I think with everything really, if you think about it with soul law, is that the reports that we have of the different parts of the soul, and I'm only talking about three, there's a lot in the Northern European tradition, is that these are reported experiences that people have had and then have given a name to. I feel this inside me. I've had this experience inside me. I am going to name it X, Y, Z, is basically what we're talking about. So you can think about the Valkyria as being somebody who said, oh, I'm feeling this. What does this mean? So if you are familiar with the concept of the soul seed or the essential essence or the core self or anything like that, we might name that the Valkyria, just like the heart essence. And for me, is incredibly important because we're so much more enmeshed and connected in many ways in our society. We have so much more that we're being told and conditioned into. That ability to heal and to find our true essence again is something that, if you were, living in a small community with a lot of time to be present and at one with nature, and to the food that you ate, you produced it from your own hands, and all of these things, you probably were much, much more secure in yourself, in your idea and sense of selfhood, and of selfhood being part of everything that's around you than we are today. We're much more sort of separate in many ways, and we created these constructs, of psychology to help to understand ourselves. The Valkyria is much more an energetic sense. So I think that's perhaps why it's so important for us to work with. Now, I work with the Valkyria as being the main access point for me would be particularly through the birth runes and through your personal sun rune as well, that you can receive healing from your sun rune. And I've done separate videos on this. I'm not going to talk about this a huge amount. That allows you to, it literally is doing the work of clearing out all of the other stuff so that you get back into, this is me. This is who I am, in a way that I think is very important. And it's perhaps, I don't know, I don't want to use the word evolution because it makes it sound as if our ancestors weren't as evolved as we are, just different, and we need to learn from them. But we're also having our own initiatory experiences, our own spirit journeys, which are different to those of our ancestors. So the Valkyria centers us back in that sense of me, of I, of the divine resting inside you, rather than being something that you have to go out and find and obey and receive education from, and those sorts of things, that somebody else owns it, saying the sacred is in you, which a lot of the modern religions help encourage us to see the divine as being outside of the self. So I believe that's why the Valkyria is so important at this point. And the final piece of the soul that, again, our king didn't have access to, and is less attested to. I don't know much about it, but it's been an incredibly important part of my own personal healing journey. It's the first part of the soul that I worked with as a Northern tradition practitioner, and this is the kin fetch. So you may have heard of the fetch or filia, which is the accompanying spirit. It's like your accompanying spirit. It's not the same as the power animals in other traditions. There are some crossovers, but it's not quite the same. It's deeply personal accompanying spirit. I'm often thought to have been born like inside, like with you at the same time, sort of incarnating at the same time as you. The placenta is sometimes thought to have been the sort of physical body almost of the kin fetch, and it stays with you as an energetic being. But it's done with its physical body when it's born, because it nurtured you and nourished you, and then it stays with you and does that. So there's lots about the fetch, and it's very intriguing. People love to hear about the fetch. But I found that the kin fetch was, for me, not even more powerful is too strong a word, but incredibly important for ancestral healing and for family healing. And if you think about our king received all of this sort of education that was piled on top and on top and on top, but didn't have that ability to go, what was it that I actually need to receive from my kin, from my ancestral line, from those who have gone before me? And our kin fetch work to support that. They are born, and this is my understanding, but I've had multiple people who I've worked with confirm this back to me. They are born when a promise is made. So it could be literally like a leader is designated as a leader, and they promise to be in service, and the kin fetch is created that binds that promise, or a marriage, or an entry into a contract of any sort. The kin fetch preserves the unique essence of that energy, so that if it goes wrong, not always when, but if it goes wrong, we can then work with the kin fetch, and the kin fetch will remind us of what the original energy, the original intention behind the promise was. So kin fetch are wonderful for saying, no, you've gone a bit wrong there. This was created in love in the first instance. And yes, you're really like bickering now. You hate each other right now. But I support that energy of love, of commitment, of service, whatever it is that was created in that moment. Because if you think about the king, if he had had access to working with the kin fetch of his people, then he would have been able to receive initiator experiences from them about what does it mean for you to preserve these principles of, it's not consumption. The Ingu seed is not consumption. It's the seed and the cycle of life and the growing and the nourishment and the potential and the what is it that you're birthing forward into the world. It is, the eating of the seed, but it's also the sacrifice of the seed to the earth, and the recognition that we have to plant the seeds so that more grows as well. We can't just eat it all. We can't just consume it all. So the kin fetch can offer us access to the deeper wisdom that we might have lost through text, and they can certainly support ancestral healing and the healing down the family line. So you can work with them by connecting with shamanic journeys with them. You can create ancestral altars. You will see my little fox back there. It's a representation that I found of one of the kin fetch that I work with, and is very present to me. So you can honor them through working with animal spirits as well. So those for me are three soul law story bones that I wanted to bring to you. So we've had 3 runes and the story bones that they've offered to us, and just a little bit of a counseling there to sort of say, that the runes are so deep, they are initiators in their own right. And that, and then the 3 pieces of soul law that I brought for you, and that recognition that what we are doing is we don't want to learn about them, we want to quest with them in whatever way feels right for you. So this is why I created Awaken for the runes, is because I wanted to facilitate initiatory spirit quest journeys for people seeking to understand and work with the runes as energy forms. Idrazel's path, the one-to-one work that I do, works with the parts of the soul, and Awaken includes a module about soul law, so you can get started on that as well. But what I would recommend for you is, if you feel like, yes, the story bones are calling me, I can feel them, they're tingling a little bit and they're saying, come here, come here. But what I need is that sort of ability to be supported, to have facilitated for me that initiatory experience. Then that is what I created my programs for. If you're looking for a more of a personal journey, if you're looking, I want to spirit quest for my own sovereign path, for my own sense of what is my destiny, what am I supposed to be doing here, what is it that I need to release, that is things I've been told that I should do. The whole sort of the victory bit, I need to look like a king, I need to look like I'm succeeding, I need to produce lots of stuff in order to be successful, all of those things. If you're thinking, no, that's not the truth, that's not the truth of my path for me, but I'd like some help to find out what it is, then book a North Star session with me would be the way forward for that. So I hope that you have enjoyed that quest with the Manaz rune, the Tewaz rune, and the Ingu's rune offered to us through our story from our king, who I like to believe has received perhaps a little bit more peace through sharing that with me, and then me offering that to you around the difference between education and initiation. And I hope that you have enjoyed hearing a little bit about 3 parts of the Northern tradition soul complex that I have worked with over time, and what working with them can offer us, and how they can offer us that deeper access to our wisdom and our ancestral wisdom and the wisdom of our land, and connection to our soul path and our destiny. So please do, if you have enjoyed the session, let me know in the comments. Do share the session, like it, and let me know how you have traveled with this and what you have received from it.